the Democrats are afraid to do anything because they don't want to be criticized. But fighting crime is a good thing. We have to explain. We're going to fight crime. That's a good thing. Already they're saying he's a dictator. The place is going to hell, and we've got to stop it. So instead of saying he's a dictator, they should say we're going to join him and make Washington safe. But they say he's a dictator. And then they end up getting mugged.
And the Democrats are defenders of crime. They see an opportunity to defend crime and murder. The Democrat Party in the United States is they're like the party of Pol Pot. They're like the Khmer Rouge. They're overseeing a genocide of black people. And then the Democrats have their black mayors come out from across the country and condemn any effort to tap the brakes on murder. You know how they are. They're Democrats. They're the left. The left kills. Speaking of which, President Trump will be meeting with Vlad the Impaler Putin, product of the Soviet Union and the KGB and the Stasi, the East German Communist Secret Police, throwing people off of rooftops and out windows, and they didn't even have to be gay, like the Islamists. But the Democrats are on the side of the Islamists now, too. They're on the side of Iran and the Ayatollahs and Hamas, and certainly not the Jews. And they call themselves socialists, kind of like Adolf Hitler and his Socialist Workers' Party of Germany back in the old days. And the Democrat Party, they're on the wrong side of everything. They're on the wrong side of children and this genital mutilation thing, the child genital mutilation. That's everybody talks about these 80-20 issues and these 90-10 issues. The Democrats are on the wrong side of absolutely everything. They're on the wrong side of history. And we've got a bunch of Democrat politicians today for you. Most of them are black. We got Gavin Newsom, too, definitely not black. But he is sabotaging our nation as well. And the Democrats, they're pounding the table for statehood for D.C., which is just another way of picking a racially divisive fight because they want to maintain the murder rates. Murder rates, 41 per 100,000. In London, it's 1.1 per 100,000. And you know what the Democrats' response to that is? Well, we need to confiscate everybody's guns. Yeah, okay. Nobody in Washington has been killed with a legal gun in a long, long time, maybe since Ashley Babbitt was gunned down inside the Capitol by that racist police officer. So we've got that. I look up numbers. That's one of the things that I do. And historical trends. And, the Democrats, they may love Luigi Mangione. They love Luigi Mangione, who gunned down a CEO, shooting him in the back on a sidewalk in New York City, Manhattan, no less. It wasn't even Queens or the Bronx. It was Manhattan. And Luigi Mangione became an instant celebrity in Democrat circles. What does that tell you? That's very instructive, I think. What did that CEO do wrong? Health insurance, bad. Healthcare companies. And the Democrats, they demonize the Supreme Court. An assassin shows up. Donald Trump, an assassin shows up. Then another assassin shows up. The Democrat Party is a violent death cult at this point. And you remember that whole Black Lives Matter thing that started? They started organizing Occupy Wall Street to see who was stupid enough to sleep in a sleeping bag in their own feces for months on end. Well, they set up rape tents because the sexual assaults were so out of control that they had to set up rape crisis centers and their Wall Street encampments, right? Occupy. Well, they want to occupy. They like to occupy things. But it's quite amazing what the Democrats are doing. And actually, if you want to fight crime and cut the number of murders disproportionately impacting black people in the United States, dramatically disproportionately impacting black people in the United States, then the Democrats are going to fight you. You want to fight crime? Well, first you got to get back. You got to get past the Democrats because the Democrats are your first obstacle. And they get their, Democrat bullwhip cracking black mayors and black politicians to come out and condemn fighting crime, saving black lives as racist. Isn't that funny? I can declare here today that when it comes to the Democrat Party, black lives don't matter. They're not pro-life. They're not pro-baby life, where 40% of the black population is exterminated in the womb, and the Democrats applaud that. It's choice. choice. Well, it's also a choice to gun down CEOs on the sidewalks of New York and to shoot police officers across the country. You see the fun thing, we were talking about it yesterday. A Democrat showed up in Washington, D.C., and he was dressed like he was on his way to put on a musical. And he threw his, all the reports say, Subway sandwich. I don't know if it was Philly Mike's or what the sandwich was, but looked like it might have been a foot-long Subway sandwich, a submarine sandwich. And and he threw it, standing 2 feet from a federal officer in full tactical gear, and threw it at the police officer and pelted him, and then ran away. And he ran away with his pink Izod shirt on, with his collar turned up, and said, "You can't catch me." And, of course, they caught him. And unfortunately, they didn't beat him to an unrecognizable bloody pulp, like Big Balls was with the Doge thing. They're fine with that, too. They're fine with that. They're fine with the 2 Israeli embassy staffers being gunned down and shot to death at the Jewish Museum with a Democrat yelling, "Free Palestine, free Palestine." Well, other Democrats show up at the Israeli embassy in Washington, the Israeli consulate in Atlanta, and they set themselves on fire because the Democrat Party has created a lot of illness. I wonder if they were transgender, because they're fighting for more, just for children. They just want transgender children. Keep them away from the children, the Democrat Party. But they're angry. Oh, no, the National Guard has been deployed in Washington, D.C. It's so terrible. It's the end of democracy. He's a dictator. And all that crazy stuff, right? Just amazing stuff. Because he wants to reduce the number of homicides overwhelmingly in Washington and in Chicago and in Baltimore and across the country. Black homicides, black on black crime. Can't say that because the Democrats will, you can't tell the truth. And that's the Democrat Party's first war is on the truth, of course. And the White House, they want to point out that our homicide rate in Washington, D.C., for example, I learned only today, our homicide rate in Washington, D.C., where I live and where I work and where I shop and where I go to restaurants, is 4 times as high as it is in Los Angeles. And when you compare it to Baghdad, it's 7 or 8 times as high as the homicide rate in Baghdad, in Iraq. That's in Iraq, not in New Jersey. And the Democrats are fine with that, with the homicide rate in Washington, D.C. being what it is. They don't care. Right? And then a nice young 21-year-old intern from the University of Massachusetts visiting Washington, D.C., doing an internship on Capitol Hill. And he's gunned down. And the Democrats don't riot like George Floyd. George Floyd was St. George of fentanyl, a career felon, a junkie who died with fentanyl and methamphetamine in his blood system while resisting arrest, and he had a cardiac episode, and he died. And if they had found him at home, reclined in his Barcalounger, they would have declared it to be an accidental drug overdose. But they put the police officer in prison, Derek Chauvin, where a Democrat stabbed him 22 times. I'm beginning to think that there's a pattern emerging here from the Democrat Party, perhaps starting with Ford's Theater here in Washington, D.C., where, they've got lots of presidential assassins, the Democrat Party. But the first Republican president to come along ended slavery, and the Democrats assassinated him. Then they assassinated more Republican presidents, and then a communist assassinated John F. Kennedy. And they're fine with all that. Because, again, this is all the left. The left is the most murderous death cult in the history of humankind. The Islamists don't hold a candle to the left, the worldwide left, most murderous gang of brigands that the world has ever seen. And now they're fighting for more crime. And I know this because if you're fighting against crime, they're fighting against you. Isn't that amazing? Yes, it is. And, again, I looked up numbers, and I brought a bunch of them with me. And they're quite astonishing. The Democrat Party should be declared to be what it is, and that's basically a terrorist organization full of how many, honestly, they shot Trump, they shot Congressman Steve Scalise, they shoot police officers in suicide attacks with mass police murders. That's right, in Dallas and in Baton Rouge and beyond. The Democrats, suicide attacks, self-immolations, Democrats, everywhere you look. And they want to fight for more homelessness, too, because we learned yesterday from the Washington Times that the Trump administration has cleaned up and cleared out the U.S. Park Police, a federal uniform, federal law enforcement agency. A great many of them, I think half of them in Washington, D.C., the U.S. Park Police. And I've known members of the Park Police. It's a serious outfit. Park Police cleared 70 homeless camps. Not 70 homeless people, but in our small city of 68 square miles. And I believe that includes the surface of the rivers. They cleaned out 70 homeless camps, more than one per square mile. How many homicides do we have per square mile? 68 square miles. How many carjackings do we have per square mile in a year? The Democrats are supporting that and promoting it. Yeah, you can't fight that. Come on, this is normal. This is when you say remember normal to Democrats, they long for the old days of the early 90s in Washington when we were having 580 homicides a year instead of the low 182. These people, they're fighting for more homicides, clearing out the homeless encampments. And the homeless who are being cleared out are given a choice of treatment for their drug addiction or alcoholism or shelter. And if they choose neither, well, then you should be dragged off the street because you're a stain. Remember, I had these homeless people living across the street from us in our building, and one guy was there for a lot of years, and he sat against the same spot on the wall every day, and when he got up and moved, there was a stain there. So his nickname became Stain. He was Stain, right? And then another homeless guy came along on the same block, sat against another part of the wall, and another Smudge. So his nickname became Smudge because where he sat in the same place every day, there was a smudge there. And we'd give him stuff and bring him Thanksgiving dinner. And one of the guys, I think it was Smudge, ended up wearing my leather jacket and my boots and my socks. And he had our silverware and plates because we brought him Thanksgiving dinner. And he didn't want to give any of it back because he's mentally ill. Otherwise, he wouldn't be sleeping on the street for years and years on end. But the Democrats love the kind of the New Delhi, India approach to American cities. They are here to destroy the world. They're going to start with the United States. They're the left. They're not liberals. So the headlines today, D.C.'s homeless begin to see the effects of Trump's crackdown. The Washington Post calls it a crackdown. So wait, treatment or shelter, that's a crackdown. Because you got to have mentally ill, crazy people. I read the story yesterday, the Federalist, the great people at the Federalist in Washington, D.C., with 3 drunk, homeless, mentally ill people camped out at their front door. Young women who are working there. They'd be interns. They could be employees making no money. And they show up and they can't get in the front door of their place of work. And they ask the crazy, drunk, homeless guy with a bottle of booze to move, and he threatens them instead. And the Democrats are like, yeah, that's his First Amendment right. Suddenly they're for the Bill of Rights, which they're not, and pretty amazing stuff. But the Washington Post is angry about it, that homeless begin to see the effects of Trump's crackdown. That means help is on the way. That if it were a Democrat doing it, the headline would be, help is on the way, and it'd be a banner headline. Man accused of throwing sandwich at a Customs Border Protection agent, federal law enforcement, faces federal assault charges, and it's about GD time. It's about time. It's way overdue. But the Democrats don't believe in the law. They're anarchists. In fact, it was one of their anarchists that assassinated, who was that, McKinley, that the Democrat anarchist assassinated, President McKinley. Amazing stuff. A D.C. police sergeant exposed her superiors for misclassifying crimes to make stats look low. The city just quietly settled her lawsuit. This is the Washington Free Beacon. I've got that for you. Wonderful stuff. Governor Wes Moore, he's a Democrat in the state of Maryland. He's African-American, says he will not deploy the National Guard. White House and the Fraternal Order of Police respond because he's pro-crime. He's pro-murder in Baltimore. And Democrats like, oh, no, the numbers are way down. Come on, what are you complaining about? We're killing fewer people this year than we killed last year. That's an official Democrat Party statement. Amazing stuff. Disproportionately black. And, this year, more black people will be murdered in the United States of America than there were black people that were killed in the Vietnam War. That went on from 1959 to 1975, the Americans dying there. And the Democrats, they want more of it. Just amazing. I have the black homicide victimization rate. To Democrats, black lives definitely do not matter. And I've got a lot of stuff for you today. Gerrymandering and the Democrats trying to steal, which they've been doing for years very casually and comfortably, seats in the House of Representatives, and they're back for more. Of course, we got Maxine Waters with her Civil War rhetoric. The Democrats inflicted the first American Civil War on us. They're getting busy. They're getting busy, these guys. We've got the National Guard on the streets of Washington, D.C. The Democrats are anti-U.S. military, but they're pro-Mexican drug cartel. They're pro-Hamas and anti-Israel. Juicy Smollett is back in the news, too. Juicy Smollett, he's back. He's trying to, re-spark his career. Good stuff. We've got Governor Pritzker, Circumference, as he's known at the Knights of the Round Table. And he's like, our values are important while illegal aliens are murdering Chicagoans all over the place. I don't think your values are American values, billionaire boy. Amazing stuff. And the Peruvian illegal alien who was grabbed on the mall in Washington, D.C. with a giant butcher knife. The Democrats want more of that. Amazing stuff. The Toronto Film Festival, it's an international film festival, banning a documentary because it tells the truth about Hamas, and they can't have that. Abortion scandal in Virginia schools, the United Nations, and more. We're at 888-630-9625. Chris here with a list of things that none of us should trust. The Washington Post, the New York Times, anything on CNN. Here's a list of things that I do trust. The Washington Times. Support real journalism for just $1 a week at washingtontimes.com/Chris. So why are the Democrats defending high murder rates, sky-high murder rates? They're fundamentally anti-police because they're leftists and not liberals. And by their deeds, by their actions, by the laws that they pass, and the actions that are taken by cities from Chicago to Baltimore to Washington, D.C., the actions that the Democrat Party takes, they lead to more homicides. And more homicides means more African-American homicides in most of these big cities. And most of these big cities have mayors who are black. New York, Baltimore, Washington, Chicago, Los Angeles, and many beyond that. And if you're looking want to see where the murder rates are off the charts when it comes to Western civilization, they're all Democrat-run cities. And I know I've talked to lefties. Oh, what about Oklahoma City? It's, tell me all about it. That's great. But the numbers are quite astonishing, and they ought to be. And I haven't talked about it much in the last couple of years, I think, but for many years on the radio, living in Washington, D.C., and being in the middle of and having police officer friends and having been a part of all this stuff for many years in Washington, it's something I've been talking about for years on the radio. I know Democrats are forming mobs, and their mobs are being funded by left-wing groups, including George Soros and his radical left-wing Kill America gang. There was the guy that threw his foot-long Subway sandwich at the police officer from 2 feet away from the police officer, federal law enforcement. And the Democrats, they went out there, individuals dressed in pink and mobs dressed in black, protesting and chanting, and they're chanting in favor of crime and in favor of murder. And last night, Right Angle News Network had D.C. residents, not used to being held accountable, were shocked as they were arrested by D.C. Metropolitan Police. How can that be? And here is a woman who ran up and assaulted a federal law enforcement officer in tactical gear. And it's a group of police officers. This woman, if this were the dictatorship they claim it is, like lefties run all over the world, this woman would have been shot on the spot. But another police officer did jump in and throw the B word to the ground, and she got a little bit of what she deserved. right-angle news network is covering it. CNN is not. The Washington Post is not. This woman goes down, and then she's flipped over, and I assume she's put in cuffs here because she just decided there are cops. I'm going to sprint over and crash into a federal agent with his body armor on, and I'm going to assault him. And she should, what was it that Enrique Tarrio got? What kind of a prison sentence did he get for being in a hotel room in Baltimore on January 6th? I think he was sentenced to 22 years in prison. This woman actually showed up and violently attacked a police officer wearing body armor, standing there with a group of other police officers, and they just, look, they're out here assaulting the police. They're shooting the police. They're committing suicide attacks in the last few years, committing suicide attacks against the police. Mass murder. I believe the Democrat murdered 9 police officers in a suicide attack in Dallas, Texas. Another Democrat, I think he killed 5 police officers in Baton Rouge in a suicide attack on the police there. The Democrat Party is crazy. Oh, now we got another Democrat, that lady who's calling for, and she's a crazy lefty, who is pro-Palestinian, whatever the hell that means. She's pro-Hamas. She's pro-murder of Jewish people, pro-destroying the state of Israel like the Nazis would be doing if they're around today. And she is calling on Democrats to martyr themselves. I've got that audio for you coming up as well. The Democrat Party is a violent party, and it's pro-criminal and pro-crime. Now, with that said, let's go to the telephones, Michael, because I know a lot of you are paying attention to what's going on out there and have access to the internet, probably without government intervention, as Democrats apparently need just to breathe every day. Let's go to Matt calling from Arlington, Virginia. Matthew, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Good morning, Chris. You can't make up some of these crazy coincidences in history. This gentleman, Mr. Dunn, who threw the sandwich at the policeman or at the ICE officer, that was at the corner of 14th and U Street. And that Subway restaurant was formerly a liquor store, the National Liquor Store. In 1968, when the riots broke out after the death of Martin Luther King, the very first Molotov cocktail was thrown into that window at the National Liquor Store.
After, I always like to point out, because it's not taught in school, after Martin Luther King was shot and killed by a Democrat Party presidential campaign volunteer who was working for the Democrat presidential campaign of Democrat Governor George Wallace out of Alabama, a racist, segregationist Democrat. And the volunteer for his campaign shot and killed Martin Luther King, another one in the Democrat column.
Yeah, and it was because of the National Guard and the police being mobilized that section of town did not burn to the ground. Other parts of the city did, but they were able to establish their headquarters there for that entire week of trying to quell the riot. But I always thought that is just a funny coincidence, and here's a man in a pink shirt throwing a sandwich.
Yeah, he's got shorts and running shoes, and I think I heard that he's 37 years old. His name is Sean Charles Dunn, and he's a liberal Democrat, a D.C. man, Axios typing on behalf of the Democrat Party. A D.C. man accused of throwing a sandwich at a Customs and Border Protection agent he's facing felony charges, including assault on a federal law enforcement officer. Again, Enrique Tarrio, he's a black Cuban American, was given 22 years in prison. He wasn't even in Washington, D.C. on January 6th. And let me tell you, Matt, because we've got Jeanine Pirro, who is now the U.S. attorney for the District of Columbia, and she's promising to prosecute criminals. She was asked about this Sean Charles Dunn, the Democrat, throwing a sub-style sandwich at the Customs Border Protection agent, a federal law enforcement agent, at Metro Transit Police, with Metro Transit Police, one of our law enforcement agencies in Washington, for the subway system and public transportation, like the New York City, Port Authority Police and so on. And it was Sunday, And here is Jeanine Pirro on, she's not going to sit still for this stuff.
The president's message to the criminals was, if you spit, we hit. Well, we didn't quite do that the other night when an individual went up to one of the federal law enforcement officers and started jumping up and down, screaming at him, berating him, yelling at him. And then he took a Subway sandwich about this big and took it and threw it at the officer. He thought it was funny. Well, he doesn't think it's funny today because we charged him with a felony, assault on a police officer. And we're going to back the police to the hilt. So there. Stick your Subway sandwich somewhere else.
And we have, Matt, for a long time, we've had this Democrat prosecutor in Washington who lets everybody go. He just lets all the criminals walk back out on the street for more crime because Democrats mean, more Democrats means more crime. Now, and also, according to Axios, Dunn, the pink shirt wearing, Subway sandwich throwing Dunn, was yelling right up in the cop's face, screaming, I can't say what he said, but F you effing fascists. Why are you here? I don't want you in my city. And then across the street screaming at him within inches of his face, winding his arm back and forcefully throwing the Subway sandwich. And he's about 2 feet from his face. And he thinks that that's okay because Democrats are violent. They're anti-police. The Democrat Party is, they're worse than Al-Qaeda at this point when it comes to being, they love death more than we love life. That was the old Al-Qaeda slogan, Matt. And now it's the Democrat Party saying they're pretty amazing. And now Jeanine Pirro is saying, well, he's going to face felony assault on a police officer. I think it's different for a federal police officer as well as a Customs Border Protection officer is. And President Trump is calling it the National Guard, and the Democrats are all against it. Aren't they amazing, Matt? Where is this going, Matt?
I don't know because I think they've got such good public relations. I saw some people over the weekend on the Metro coming in for one of these demonstrations. Later saw it on the evening news, and the demonstration probably had 20 people. But the way it was photographed, you would think there were 200 or 2,000 people.
Right. Yeah, that's news media, the cameraman, the editor, the producer in the newsroom. Yeah, right, overinflating the Democrat efforts and downplaying the violence, just eliminating reporting on the violence. It's pretty amazing.
I would welcome some peace and quiet on the Metro. Enough of the people jumping the turnstiles. It's still going on.
Sure, yeah, and the Democrats announced that they're not going to enforce the law, and they're good at not enforcing the law. They're pro-crime and they're pro-criminal. They're anti-police and they're anti-civilizational. The old Rolling Stones, just as every cop is a criminal and all the sinners saints. George Floyd, they sainted and burned half the country to the ground, injuring literally thousands of police officers, 180 at the White House when they were attacking the White House for 3 days while President Trump was in there. But that's no January 6th, where Ashley Babbitt was shot and killed, the only person who died that day. And, Matt, since you brought up these protesters coming in, they had this pro-Palestinian protest, right? This pro-Palestinian protest that, when was that, a week ago? And one of the women, I want you to listen to this, Matt, because where's that soundbite? Oh, perfect. And here's this woman who she's got a sign. She's with a group of people, and they're chanting, for kill the Jews, save Hamas, the radical Islamic terrorist organization that is genocidal. While they yell about genocide on the Palestinians, they're dumber than Nazis, but probably just as dangerous. And here's this woman in Washington D.C. And I know we traded information on this, and we had the organization and. Oh, yeah, it's the Students for Justice in Palestine, which they abbreviate because they abbreviate everything. SJP. SJP is the organization, and they want justice in Palestine. And here's the organization. Students, are you ready to do what revolution requires? And their big banner, 8-foot bright red banner, canvas banner, globalize the Intifada, and with their SJP, and here's the one with the Palestinian flag. And here's a woman wearing camouflage, and she's got a bullhorn and a bunch of people with her, and they're wearing Saudi Arabian headdresses, not Hamas or so-called Palestinian headdresses.
The time has come for you to do more. Revolutionary intellectual and martyr Bassem el-Gharaj said that to carry the intifada to the end, the individual must accept learning what the revolution requires.
The revolution.
Not what will provide a comfortable life.
Red banner.
So I ask you again, will you do what the revolution requires? Yes!
Will you do it?
Will you do what the revolution requires? Yes! Martyrs rising from the rubble! Martyrs rising from the rubble! We will carry on your struggle! We will carry on your struggle! There is only one solution! Intifada revolution! Intifada revolution!
Kill the Jews. And she said, are you ready to martyr yourselves? Are you willing to die in the revolution, the intifada, to wipe Israel off the map from the river to the sea and to eliminate the state of Israel and kill all the Jews? And this is in Washington, D.C., and it's Students for Justice in Palestine coalition, all dressed up. They're too dumb to know what they're doing, but they're little commies. They're brainwashed. And let me say this, Matt. This is 100% on the Democrat Party. 100%.
Certainly is. Do you got another 20 seconds?
I do.
All right. Chris, off topic here. I know you're a student of language and proper grammar, and I'd like your comment on this.
Uh-huh.
I have a grammar reference book from 1983, and it has this entry, colon. The British use the colon more often than Americans do, and somewhat differently. Some Americans do this too, but few of them do it well. They have learned something about the British use of the colon by reading British prose, but they were never taught to use it properly and are vague about its function.
That's kind of fun. What that reminds me of is Winston Churchill talking about the British Navy and how he said the British Navy is best known for buggery and sodomy. Now, what does that have to do with punctuation? But that's what it reminded me of. So it's the British using the colon, in ways that Americans don't necessarily. Isn't that funny? Rum, sodomy, and the lash.
Well, if Mr. Dunn makes his way to the D.C. jail, maybe that Subway sandwich will come in handy.
Maybe the Subway sandwich will come in handy. That's fun stuff, Matthew. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Take care, sir.
That's
Bye.
fun. From Arlington, Virginia. Thanks, Matt. That's funny. Yeah, and you got to love Winston Churchill. He was so great. His mother was American. His mother was an American, Winston Churchill. That's why when you go down Massachusetts Avenue, which I do once a day, and then I come back up Massachusetts Avenue once a day as well, in front of the British Embassy, which looks like the British Embassy, there is a life-size, larger-than-life bronze statue of Winston Churchill. And, the embassy grounds, that's technically British property. And the statue has Winston Churchill taking a stride, and his front foot is on American soil, and his back foot is on British soil because it's on the soil of the embassy. And the reason it's positioned that way is because his mother was an American, probably why he was so great, and his father was British. So that's a fun little Washington trivia question answered, in case you had that question. Yes, sir. I don't know why that occurred to me, but the traditions of the Royal Navy are rum, sodomy, and the lash. He said, and the lash. Life in the British Navy. Hopefully it's not what it used to be.
Stick your Subway sandwich somewhere else.
And I got a bunch of audio for you coming up. Democrats primarily, and media, but I repeat myself. And not entirely, but we have normal people as well, thinking people as well. But the Democrats are fighting for more crime and more murder because they're the left. Let's go to the telephones, go back to the telephones, talk to the great American people. Let's go to Chuck, calling from the great state of Tennessee. Volunteer state. Chuck, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Hello, Chris. Thanks for taking my call, and thanks for everything you do. I just wanted to say that, they're not going to fix the problem in D.C. until they change the people that cause the problems. like their DEI mayor, their DEI police chief. I mean, she has no business running a police department, and people with morals and credentials do not want to work for a person like that.
Well, you're
People
right.
with intelligence don't want to work for idiots and morons.
Well, you know, who does want to work for idiots and morons, though, Chuck?
You're right.
Oh, there's an
It really
answer.
does.
There's an answer to that question, though, and I think the answer is other idiots and morons.
Well, exactly. They surround themselves with less intelligent people, which means that it just keeps going down further and further until we are going to have to come up with a reverse scale for IQ, because that's the only way to grade these Democrats.
It's become quite astonishing, from gender to violent crime to borders to war in Europe and the Middle East. They're just wrong about everything. Now, you mentioned the D.C. Police Chief, Pamela A. Smith. She's the chief of the Metropolitan Police Department, MPD. That's the D.C. Police Department. She was appointed to the position in 2023 by the mayor, of course. She had been serving as the department's chief equity officer. Sure. She was the chief equity officer.
Hell of a qualification.
Yeah, she was with the U.S. Park Police before that. And the U.S. Park Police is a great police department. It's a really cool police department in a whole lot of ways. But she was the chief equity officer, and she focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, inside the Metropolitan Police Department. And then suddenly she's the police chief. She is a WOC, because we have to abbreviate everything. You know, Chuck, everything is an abbreviation now. The Students for Justice in Palestine is SJP, and we're supposed to know that. DEI, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And it just goes on and on. They abbreviate it because they speak in code. And if you don't know the code, you can't keep up with their idiotic conversation. The Chief Equity Officer, I'm sure that's CEO, because she's the Chief Equity Officer. They're amazing. But you're, of course, right, Chuck. But that's because you're suffering from something we used to call common sense. Remember common sense?
Oh, yeah, it's kind of uncommon today.
It definitely is. Common sense isn't, as we like to say here. Friendly fire isn't.
President Trump could, I'm sorry, but I wish President Trump could fire them and put people in there that are just say, the only way you're going to get these people off the streets is just keep arresting them. A good police chief would say, I'm just going to keep arresting them. And if the judge lets them off, the minute they come out, I'll arrest them again.
Well, we had a Democrat, an elected Democrat, the other day saying, you can't arrest and jail your, what was it? And jail your way out of this? Arrest and prosecute your way out of this. No, that's exactly how you fight crime. But they don't understand that, Chuck.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, you bet. Nice talking to you. Common sense.